back. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe I got a little bit distracted on that last video, so I'll try to stay more on message today, not least because it's getting flipping late. Anyway, we're now doing a deep dive into the concept, so let's see where this gets us. We need to talk about the environment. Now, this one on the left is essentially your shallow green idea. It's the idea that the environment is there for us to exploit. It is a machine, and if we look into that machine, we can see that affects that, and that affects that, and that affects that, and it's a very much reductionist, mechanistic approach to nature. That if we just sit down and think about it hard enough, then we can understand it, and that means that we can calculate exactly what we're doing with absolute certainty. So if we know that if we pull that lever, then that's going to happen over there. Well, yeah, it doesn't really work. That's the problem. And so we move into this holistic view, which is embraces a much more complicated entity. The idea that we can't really begin to understand exactly the full ramifications of any particular action, because it's an infinitely complicated network of moving parts. And yeah, that's probably about it. There was something else in that, but I can't remember exactly what it was at the top of my head. But this is very much how the deep green environmentalists perceive the economy. It's not reductionist. It's much more complicated. It's beyond the capability of our most advanced computers to model exactly how the environment is going to develop. We can do it with a fair degree of accuracy, but the law of unintended consequences has never quite been eliminated. But before everyone goes, well, that means that global warming isn't going to happen. It does also mean that we should probably err on the side of caution and not write checks that we might not be in a position to cash later down the line. So that's the environment, the mechanistic view, a reductionist historical idea, and then the holistic view, which is much more contemporary amongst our environmentalists, to do with seeing the environment as a whole. So yeah, we've got the anthropocentric position there. The anthropocentric one says that there has to be some sort of value to human civilization. We've got to this point. The environment can, and so it should really sustain human civilization. There's a point to this. There's a reason why we're doing it, and whether it's Shakespeare or Picasso or going out and exploring other worlds, you know, without us, the environment is somehow devalued. And so we have that anthropocentric point of view that, you know, the world or the universe without Mozart would be a less rich place. And so there's a sort of obligation on us to try to survive. And if the environment can survive us, then it probably should. There will be problems, but certainly we've got it wrong in the past, but we can fix those. And we can fix those without necessarily chucking out the entire system and rebooting it. Well, that is basically your shallow green position. Yeah, we've made mistakes in the past, but we can do it better. And we're not going to embrace wholesale change because there's no need to do so. And we certainly shouldn't do so at any cost to our civilization, because we are kind of the point. You know, whether it's Mozart, Picasso, Turner, Tottenham Hotspur, it doesn't matter. There is something intrinsically good about civilization. And that means that we should not act in a way that is going to disadvantage our civilization. The environment has to sustain our civilization, but at the same time, we shouldn't develop our civilization to a point where it becomes inimical to the environment, because obviously that's self-defeating. But the critical point is we're not getting away from this fundamental anthropocentrism. It's in there somewhere. Yeah, anthropocentrism. That's what this is all about. That we are at the center of this thing. We're somehow different. We're somehow removed. There's a distance, and with that great power comes great responsibility. So there is an obligation on us to look after the environment, and indeed there's an urgent need for us to do so, because we are part of that interconnected whole. Part of the interconnected whole, but again somehow distant or remote. Sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Exceptionalism. Sorry, there's an exceptionalism attached to humanity that does not extend to other civilizations. Where's the Glenn Hoddle of the sperm whale world. Kids ask your dad. Before he was a pundit, he was a tremendous footballer. But now I'm getting distracted again, and I said I wouldn't do that, because the flip side of this is this ecocentrism, which says that everything that humanity's done, even Glenn Hoddle, even bicycles, even Picasso's Guernica, none of this really matters, because what really matters is the environment. Yeah, that's all nice, but if that is being achieved at cost to the environment, then it is inimical to the environment. It is bad. We shouldn't be doing it. From this follows the idea that civilization, as is currently understood, our version of civilization is incompatible with the environment. Sorry, excuse me, that's the wrong typo there. That should be incompatible with environmental goals or environmental well-being. And we are therefore advocating a reboot. Now, not necessarily 12 Monkeys. The 12 Monkeys here, I'm referring to the Terry Gilliam film where we seek to eradicate humanity because it's irredeemable. But rather that we should look at restructuring our entire civilization so that it can operate within the environment rather than against the environment. That is the deep green solution. That we can't say civilization first, environment second. We have to say, whatever we want from our civilization, it has to be able to operate within the environment. It has to operate within a limit of things that is not going to prove damaging to the long-term well-being of the environment. And so what we're trying to do here as well is to seek to undo the damage done by the environment, by civilization, and make sure the two are compatible. Here we're seeking to reconcile civilization with the environment. Here in terms of deep green, we're saying, no, we've done some real damage. We need to fix that, and we need to find a new model of civilization going forward. Okay, environmental ethics. Now this, I think, is going to be the wild card. Remember that they might chuck something in the mix. Wild chard, that's something else entirely. This they might ask you about, because it's a really interesting question. I find it absolutely fascinating. So perhaps the easiest way to look at it is like this. So if we start with the shallow green, you are here, I think, okay, that's fine. And most of us are prepared to extend our moral compass so that it takes in other people. So who matters? Well, other people matter. Our nearest and dearest matter more, and then as we get further away, perhaps they matter less. But other people generally matter, and that's been the case since the beginning of civilization, arguably even before. What we're doing now is we're starting to extend that moral compass to bring in other creatures. And we'll talk in a little bit more detail about those, about what these might be later. But we're certainly extending that to encompass other creatures. And if we're going to encompass other creatures, then maybe what we should be doing is incorporating other generations as well. So future generations. Who else are we going to bring in this? Are we going to bring in our kids, our kids' kids, our kids' kids' kids, our kids' 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 kids? Where does it stop? That's your shallow green environmental ethics, and everybody is going to be somewhere on this matrix. Wherever it is, we're going to be out there somewhere, and your matrix is your sort of moral compass is going to I can't draw. Your moral compass is going to encompass all of these people. That is really shocking. What it probably do is a big curve. There we go, like that. There, that's better. A curve that's extending out in that direction. Alternatively, we could go deep green, and deep green is very, very simple. It says everybody in this, everybody, everything in this matters just as much as anything else. Nothing has more intrinsic value. So when we come back over here and we look at the shallow green model, how far are we going to extend that? I mean, we're going to extend it, yeah, sure, to charismatic megafauna, whales, tigers, lions, great white sharks, that sort of stuff. But are we going to extend it to less charismatic microfauna? Do we care about slugs, snails, midges? And what about other less evolved forms of life? And right at the apogee, we got the nadir, perhaps. We have that. Just how far are you going to stretch your moral compass in that direction? How far are you going to stretch your moral compass in that direction? Just how are you going to stretch this? And where you are on that scale is going to determine just how deep your shallow green can go. And then at some point it just flips over a line and says, actually, you know what? Everything matters. So let's go on and look at it that way. Here's a little bit more on environmental ethics. You can pause that, read it, and hopefully it will make some sense to you. The holism there, that is your deep green. Deep green. These two are the two strands of shallow green that I was looking at earlier, the two X and Y axis, well, actually Y and Z axis of your moral compass, or your moral matrix. So hopefully that's fairly straightforward and it should make some sort of sense. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting, and we're looking back. We can draw analogies here with Marxism, because Marxism, you should remember, is that we're all living in a false consciousness. We're in a false consciousness whereby we think that we can achieve happiness and fulfillment through materialism and consumerism. Well, it's not entirely different here with environmentalism. In the short term, or in the shallow green, we need an environmental consciousness. We need that shift in perspective from anthropocentrism, you are here and nobody else matters, just to moving out to more responsible forms of anthropocentrism. Yes, we do live in an environment. Yes, our well-being is tangled up with that environment. Yes, we have a responsibility towards that environment to ensure that we look after it. So we're looking at shifting our perspective from narrow anthropocentrism to a more anthropocentrism to a more responsible anthropocentrism. Deep green, again, you're looking at that fundamental shift, that we're rejecting anthropocentrism entirely and instead we're embracing ecocentrism. That means that we as human beings need to kick our materialism. Again, it's that sense of a false consciousness. We believe that the acquisition of material goods and consumption is going to make us better. No, say the deep greens, we need to restructure our entire way of thinking. These are incompatible with ecologism, the pursuit of material. Well, you can read that. We need fundamentally to change our minds. So there's a transformative thing here. And those of you who know your Berlin will know that this is really moving into positive freedom. Yes, you might think you want to consume Xboxes and bicycles, but really what you want to do is wear hemp clothes and open-toe sandals, and that way you will find fulfillment by being part of this wider ecocentric model. But there's a fundamental shift in that. Sustainability, we can do this better. That is your shallow green. Again, that's weak sustainability. It's more of the same but better, whereas strong sustainability says no, we just got to bin that just doesn't work. We're going to have to move on and look at something else. Here we have a shallow green thinker. Not many of those in the book. The one that I would also recommend is Steven Pinker. He's another shallow green, and I will link off to him in the footnotes. So sustainability, I'm running out of time, which is why I'm moving quickly, because we got to different types of ecologism. I've touched upon a lot of that already. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get this done tonight, but we will get around to this eventually, and I hope it proves helpful. And yeah, do let me know if it's helpful. Let me know also if it's not, but do all tell your friends if it's working for you. I'll see you in a bit for different types of ecologism. Cheers now. Hey, cue music.